edition of the Contractor's Secret Weapon weekly podcast with your hosts, Dave Negri. This program is dedicated to helping contractors, remodelers, painters, roofers, roof cleaners, and business owners in the construction industry gain an unfair advantage over the competition. This program supplies you with information that the competition doesn't even know exists. This session brought to you by ContractorsSecretWeapon.com.
Hey, this is Dave Negri today with Contractor Secret Weapon, your host, and today I have a special guest, Dr. Ted Boyce, who received his PhD in applied psychology from APA-accredited graduate program at Virginia Tech and was professor of psychology at the University of Nevada in Reno. He is the current principal of the Center for Behavioral Safety, LLC, and sought-after safety consultant, conference speaker, educator, author, and executive coach. Dr. Boyce pioneered the application of behavioral science in the mining industry and is providing cost-effective safety and culture-changing training to the U.S. mining, manufacturing, and the construction industry for the past 20 years. He has authored dozens of publications, including invited works of Agman, Motivated Magazine, a Journal of Organizational Behavior Management, Rock Products. I thought that was kind of interesting, Rock Products. Training Journal. He also contributes to a regular column of Mining Quarterly and his book, The Psychology of Leadership, Awaken Your Work Culture's Full Potential in 2 Science Basic Steps. He's a full member of the American Psychological Association of Psychology Science, and the Association of Behavior Analysis International, and he is active with local and regional chapters in the American Society of Safety Engineers, and we will send you to all of his websites later. So all that for safety. Pretty awesome. So,
indeed.
Ted, I just want to thank you for being with us today and going over the topic of safety for our contractors, because it's really an important product. Not a product, but I'll cut that out. An important topic. And I love your tagline, we're not just preventing injuries, we're improving lives. Ted, thank you so much for being here.
Hey, Dave, it's my pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
There's a few questions. I know that safety, for the most part, and then I think with a lot of the contractors that listen to our program are single guys that have their own place or may have 2 to 10 employees, maybe a little higher, and they look at safety, I think, from, oh, man, I got to do that.
Yeah, it's a very common syndrome. I've seen it in many different businesses that safety is always perceived to compete with getting the job done. And yet, if you actually take a look at some of the data that have been collected, either very scientifically or just an accumulation of statistics from throughout the United States, for example, by the Bureau of Labor Statistics, what you typically find is that when you've got safety dialed in, production also improves. So I have been on a mission for more than 20 years to help people to see that, to focus on doing things in the safe way. And that is the passion that I have. And when I've been able to get that message across and folks start to do things a little bit differently and they start to see the construction job a little bit differently from a safety perspective, typically they see some benefits in other areas, such as improved production, improved quality, even improved worker morale, Dave. It's an amazing thing.
Oh, I would imagine that if everything's running smooth and you know that the owner or the management really cares about this whole safety aspect, that it's got to create a dynamic culture. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, it is. The key is not to force safety on those doing the work, but rather to get them involved and engaged in their own safety. What I have found in my years of working with large commercial builders is that when the employees' voices are heard, that wonderful ideas are shared, whether they be for safety or production or quality. In fact, right now I'm working on a very large quality initiative with a commercial builder, and what we're finding is a very strong relationship between quality of work and safety performance. So safety is a key to a lot of the other things that we hold as important as business owners, as managers, as supervisors.
Sure, and I would think that once the owner gets his mindset right, and it's actually a way to get employees to buy into the company, because now there's an overall. I would think because there's an overall. I want to make it better.
Exactly right. The simple formula is that when we show the people that are working for us that we care, they start to care about us and our business. And there's really no better way to do that than to provide a good, safe working environment and to empower those that are doing the work to do it without the fear of getting hurt, to do it in a way that they can, at the end of the day, go home and enjoy their families and do the things that they do outside of work. So there's a huge connection to employee excitement, enthusiasm, morale. Why can't we celebrate Mondays? If we provide a great work environment, including a safe work environment, folks should want to show up to work, not be dreading it after the weekend. And that is really the message that I am trying to share. And I just happen to do that through an innovative way to keeping people safe on the job site.
Well, that's super. Now, do you find that some companies make safety sort of like a fun thing or type bonuses to the whole safety culture?
Yeah, and what's interesting is that the typical buzz around safety, if you could even call it that, is that safety is a boring subject, and yet it doesn't have to be. And so there are times when owners and employers will try to add a little bit of excitement to safety through games and incentives and things of that nature. And that can be a good thing, but it can also be a bad thing, because I have seen safety games, if you will, that promise the reward for example, the absence of injuries, actually backfire. Because if you think about it, not having an injury doesn't always mean that your work site is safe, right? We might have put ourselves at risk today and just gotten lucky, right? But if we're holding on to that zero or the absence of injuries as the holy grail of safety, hey, we may not be looking at the right things. And so part of the process, Dave, is to involve the workers in being active participants in their safety. So instead of rewarding the absence of injuries to make it fun, let's reward the proper use of the PPE that we've provided them. Let's reinforce the sharing of safety information, or maybe the identification of a hazard and then the correction of it. These things that are directly actionable and observable actually are the key to keeping folks safe on the job, and it's what empowers employees.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because it was really not too long ago, within the last month, I was at a supplier, and I went in, and on their wall, we've had 245 days without any accidents, and I'm going in the back of my mind, but how many near misses?
That's exactly right, and so that number is important, right? And we talked a little bit offline about safety being mandatory, and that's the number that the regulators look at,
right? And
so we don't just throw it out, but what we also shouldn't do is emphasize it. When we get that number together with other things that would indicate we've got a safe job, then I start to believe that number a bit more. So it's not unlike when you're watching a football game and you're looking at the score on the scoreboard, right? You can usually predict what that score is going to be based on some of the statistics that are also collected, whether it be, passing yards or rushing yards or turnovers or what have you. And so the key to safety is to have those upstream measures that tell you the same thing as that injury number. And when companies start to look at both, that's when they truly start to see a difference consistent with what we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
You see that improved morale, you see that enthusiasm, that excitement, you start to see better productivity, etc.
So, and these are just some thoughts running through my head as we're talking. When you put together like a safety program to make it beneficial for everyone, do you sort of like break it down into like categories? So if you're using equipment or you're using office space, or is it, because this is all new to me, but...
Sure. The short answer is yes.
Okay.
You want to really drill down to those things that are relevant to those that are doing the work. So for a carpenter, some of the safety items that you're focusing on may be different than that of a general laborer,
right?
Or of a maintenance worker, for example. And at the same time, there are probably going to be some things that cross all of those different jobs that can unify the entire process. And it's getting the input of those that are doing the work as to what are those things that in the past have actually worried them is the best way to get that list started. Right, so we'll even go as far as customizing it to a specific job, but you're always starting with kind of general industry standards. And,
sure.
and in construction, you're worried often about falls. You're worried about if you're an electrician, electrocution. You're worried about being struck by an object or things of that nature.
Sure.
And so that starts the conversation. But from there, then usually the guys doing the work or the gals will start to share very specific things that they've encountered on similar jobs that we need to pay attention to. And when we start focusing on those things, guess what? We start to prevent injuries. We start to see improved production, improved quality, and all of that good stuff.
Yeah, and with all that improved stuff is also improved profit, which, ultimately that's why everyone's in business.
Absolutely. It's hard to get consensus on the figure that I'm going to share with you.
Okay.
So I'm going to give you a range here, but there are groups such as the National Safety Council that actually track statistics on how much a typical injury costs.
Okay, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, and I have seen those estimates range anywhere in the construction industry, anywhere from $27,000 to $38,000 for the average injury. Now, that's not just direct costs, right? That's going to be both the direct and the indirect. So it's the cost of the workers' compensation,
right.
It's the cost of the time away from work, it's the cost of hiring and training a replacement and all of that other stuff. But if you think about it, that is a huge figure. And while I don't like to talk about safety in terms of dollars and cents because there's this human component to it.
Sure, absolutely, yeah.
From a bottom line perspective, it has a huge impact, right? So think about that. If you could save $30,000 because you've prevented an injury, that's a big addition to the bottom line, and that money could be invested in many different ways, up to and including investing into an employee-involved safety program.
Sure, absolutely. I know I have a friend that has a very large roofing company, and I hear some of the horror stories where, it was not too long ago, one of his guys fell off a roof,
Oh, my goodness.
And he was tied off, and of course he untied himself off to get off onto the ladder, and he slipped and he fell off. So then he yells, and of course his partner up on the roof goes running, and guess what? He does the same thing.
Oh, my goodness.
And, it's just, and I mean, this poor guy is just going, luckily they lived. I mean, it wasn't, they got hurt fairly bad, but
right.
Nothing life-threatening. But still, it's that's just the tip of the iceberg, because here you got two guys that are hurt. And of course, they have to go to the hospital. They have to get taken care of. And, of course, he doesn't want to go to workman's comp, so he will cover the cost as far as he can before he goes into the workman's comp out of company profits.
Sure.
Because ultimately, I think the way some workman's comp are set up on, if there's no claims, you get some sort of a refund at the end of the year. I don't know if that still goes into effect or not, but that plays a part. But it's not just those guys and them being hurt, but the ripple effect on the rest of their crew that they're working with.
Absolutely. There's a huge emotional toll. So notwithstanding the fact that we have to shut down the job to take care of the folks that got hurt, notwithstanding the fact that we may have to delay getting started back up even after we've done that to understand what happened to prevent it from happening again, now you've got a crew who's down in the dumps, whose morale is low, that are now at higher risk for injury themselves, and are certainly not going to be as productive as they were prior to that incident happening, because they're worried about their coworkers.
Right.
So there's a huge impact at many, many different levels.
And we didn't throw OSHA into the mix either.
Well, this is true, and what we have to remember about OSHA is that OSHA really establishes the minimum requirements, right? So we have to be compliant with OSHA, and folks have gotten pretty good about that, and that has gotten the industry to certainly improve in terms of the numbers of injuries that have occurred, but it hasn't eliminated injuries, because it is some of this other stuff that we've been talking about that is needed to really drive those numbers to zero and to keep them there. And a lot of times it's talked about as voluntary protection. And I know that OSHA has a voluntary protection program, and I'm not here touting that, but I am suggesting that when we start to do things beyond that we are regulated to do, that's when you start to see these additional benefits that we've been talking about.
Well, yeah, it's sort of like building a house with the minimums.
That's exactly right.
You're not going to get the best products into your program if you're doing on minimums.
That's exactly right. And so the challenge for the employer, the company owner, is to find that balance between investing into the kinds of things that are beyond compliance and still keeping a productive job site. And certainly there's a little bit of upfront time, to train people or to do other things that may improve safety. My experience has been is that you typically make that up downstream, and you certainly make that up if you prevent the kinds of incidents that you just described that would require us to kind of shut the whole thing down for a period of time. Would you rather invest a couple of hours into training, or would you rather have to shut down your job for an entire day or two just to recover from an incident like the one that you talked about?
Right. I would rather be preventative all the way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's what we teach. And so when you start to focus on these actionable items that I referenced earlier, and you start to manage safety at that point, guess what? You prevent the injuries. When you react to an injury that has already happened, at that point it's too late. You need to do something so it doesn't happen again, but you've already lost that that time, and it's taken its toll in all of those ways that we've been discussing.
So you mentioned a voluntary safety training program. Is that an OSHA-based starting point?
Well, OSHA does have what they call their VPPPA program, which in shorthand is their voluntary protection program. What we do is has many of the elements of what OSHA would like to see in that voluntary protection program without the need for all of the documentation and paperwork that OSHA requires.
Okay.
And so what we do is we teach the essence of it from a very sound behavioral science perspective. And my experience has been when I have been on large commercial projects that have voluntary protection programs in place is that some of them are truly doing what OSHA has suggested and recommended.
Yeah.
Others have just satisfied the requirements. They've checked boxes. So just because we have a document that says that we have a comprehensive site-specific training program does not in and of itself make a safer work site. Using that site-specific safety program makes it a safer work site. So it's like when I recently went to the doctor for a physical exam, and getting up in the years a little bit, you start to get a little bit, soft in the middle. I try to stay very active. I'm very fortunate that I'm in very, very good health, and yet it always seems to be the common theme that the doctor says, hey, you could afford to lose 5 pounds or so. Just keep an eye on that. And I mentioned to him this time, well, I've got a gym membership. And his response to me was, having a gym membership is not going to help you to lose the weight. Using the gym membership will. And so it's the same thing with safety. We can say that we have this program in place, but if we're not utilizing it, then it is doing absolutely nothing for us. And so whereas the essence of what OSHA talks about in voluntary protection, I think is important because they focus on leadership, they focus on looking at behaviors, they focus on training, they focus on things that we should be doing. My experience has been is that to get that official status from OSHA requires a lot of effort, and what happens is people just start chasing the paper rather than doing what the paper is suggesting they should do. So we kind of cut through the chase and say, hey, you know what? You don't need to have that certificate on the wall in order to get a benefit from this basic idea. Let's just roll up our sleeves and make this happen, and let's do it in a way that your workers are going to embrace this and make it a part of their daily routines.
So, you're cutting out all the red tape and all the minutia to get down to the bottom line of these are the actual things that work, so let's put these things in place.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I don't want to, put down the OSHA program. I'm just suggesting that it can be more cumbersome than I believe some folks are going to want to endure.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah. So you are actually a safety consultant.
Correct.
And so when should a general contractor or a subcontractor use someone like yourself or a safety consultant?
Well, I think there's a couple of different instances.
Okay.
If you take a look at the compliance issues, if there is an issue with being in compliance, then you may want to look for somebody that has a good set of experience in developing and administering a very strong, compliant regulatory kind of safety program. And there are those types of safety consultants out there. In fact, that's probably a majority of them. When I go, for example, to the American Society of Safety Engineers conferences, typically these are certified safety professionals who know the ins and the outs of the regulation, and that is important. Uh-huh. The other type of safety consultant is typically the the kind that I am, which is the one that is going to help you to understand why people do what they do, and to recognize potential, we'll call them behavior traps, that can increase the probability of an injury, and then to put in place some practical strategies to minimize or to mitigate those behavior traps, and to increase the awareness of safety more generally on the job site. And so that, to me, gets into the territory of voluntary protection, because OSHA isn't saying you have to do this. I'm suggesting that you're going to see a great benefit beyond the compliance if you choose to do it. And that choice is what makes it voluntary.
So let me try to repeat back to you so that I understand.
Sure.
So basically what you do as a consultant is you help the employees or even the manager or the owners understand why they do certain things and try to avoid them so that they will be safer?
That's it in a nutshell.
Okay.
And we try to work with everybody so that there's a two-way communication, communication from those that are managing and running the work, and also from those doing the work to the folks that are managing. And when you get that two-way communication going, that's when you start to see huge improvements in safety. So communication is a key factor.
Yeah, I would imagine that that whole overall program would be much more beneficial in the end to the business owner than just this is what we got to do, but figuring out why.
That's exactly right. And what it does is it helps them to also recognize that the one-size-fits-all cookie-cutter approach isn't always all that it's cracked up to be. That it may be touching on issues that are not important at that particular juncture of the job. And so what we try to do is help them to be more sensitive to the things that are going to make a valuable difference in real time, and to also be able to adjust as the job dynamics change.
Okay. Is there any particular size, let's put it this way, a size of a company that would be looking for a safety consultant?
The companies that I typically work with are probably mid-sized to large-sized organizations. That would be the most common type of client. And at the same time, what we have found a way to do is to have products available to anyone, something that is going to be at a price point that they can manage. So if it is a mom and pop type of organization that employs 10 or fewer employees, we'll still find a way to bring value to them. It just may be with a different method than I would with a large commercial builder that employs 300 of their own folks, and then has subcontractors and staffs up to 1,000 people on a large commercial high rise. A good consultant is going to be able to do that. A good consultant is going to say, "Hey, you know what I offer to general contractor B down the road isn't going to be a good fit for you, but I can give you the essence of it this way."
Right. I did notice that you have an online course that I'm sure would benefit just about anybody that is really looking for a different mindset on safety for their business.
Absolutely. Our Motivating Safety at Work course, which is online at udemy.com, is an overview of this process that we have been describing. It really takes the student through the general philosophy and the basic principles of this proactive safety process that I think makes a valuable difference. The course also includes a lot of additional resources, so a couple of white papers and links to additional information such that those that are more of the do-it-yourselfers
Right.
could probably get started. And if they needed a little bit of help, then someone like myself is just a phone call or an email away to kind of fill in the blanks that maybe they've been struggling with. So that could be a very good option for a smaller company.
Wow, that's awesome. So I will make sure that we put that link on our website in the show notes to the Udemy from your website. So how can our listeners get a hold of you? What's your website or email if you would like to give that out?
Sure. I'll give you the primary website, which is my personal website, and that kind of will take folks to other places. But that is thomaseBoyce.com, so THOMAS. E is in Edward, B is in boy, OYCE, .com. And the primary company website is cbsafety.com. So C is in Charlie, B is in Bravo, the word safety, SAFETY.com. And then there are a couple of, I guess, subsidiary websites that focus on a couple of key services that we also provide as an extension. So for example, one thing that we've been doing a lot of are work culture surveys or work culture assessments, which is just a great way to understand what the employees are thinking and how that impacts what they are doing. And for that, we have a separate website called culturecheckup.com. The other two websites will get you to all of those.
That sounds awesome. And I'm really looking forward to letting our listeners get this information. I really want to thank you for spending time with me today, making the safety issue a little more interesting than what I thought it would be, for sure.
Good.
And of course, that's your passion, is to make it more interesting and more readily available to, I guess, for everyone, not just a mandatory thing.
That's absolutely true, and you said it at the very beginning with the tagline. We're not just preventing injuries; we're improving lives, and we've been on a mission to do that for 20 plus years. And I certainly hope that those that tune into this podcast will find some value in the information that we've shared.
I know they will. I thank you so much for spending time with us today, Ted, and I thank you for myself and on behalf of our listeners.
Dave, it's my pleasure. I thank you for the opportunity, and I'm looking forward to staying in touch. And anyone who happens to be listening to the podcast, feel free to get in touch with me through one of those websites. I'm happy to continue the conversation with them then.
Awesome, and we will put all the links up on our website so they can easily get in touch with you, because I know driving down the road it gets, what was that? So just go to contractorsecretweapon.com and you'll get the show notes and just hit those buttons and it'll get you over to Ted.
That's exactly right, because we don't want them putting themselves at risk by trying to write something down while they're speeding down the highway, right?
Right. Again, thanks, Ted, so much, and I really do appreciate you spending time with us today.
It's my pleasure.
Thanks for joining us for another weekly episode of the Contractors Secret Weapon podcast with Dave Negri. We would love to hear your comments about this episode, so visit us online at www.contractorsecretweapon.com and let us hear your thoughts. If you are listening via iTunes, please leave us a positive review. The more positive reviews we receive, the more other contractors will benefit from this show. Thank you, and see you next time here on the Contractors Secret Weapon podcast.